Hello, and welcome to our very first Friday episode of Gatherverse News Unscripted. My name is Jade Hernandez, and I am your host on Fridays. Today's show is sponsored by Gifts for Good. Gifts for Good's gifting platform empowers employees and clients to select their own premium gifts from over 70 nonprofits and social enterprises. Gifts for Good. Now we are on to today's show. We're going to be talking about VR. We're going to be talking about students' creativity and dementia. Our guest today is Dr. Julia Scott. She is the director of the Brain and Memory Care Lab at Santa Clara University. Dr. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So let's dig right in. Let's talk about first who this software is helping right now. You're connecting VR, student application, and dementia caretakers. So let's start out with who we're helping right now.
So who we're looking to help with this training program are family caregivers of people with dementia and also primarily in-home caregivers, where in both those groups, they don't get a lot of preparation to do a very hard and ever-changing job.
That's absolutely true. And it's a very difficult job. And there are a lot of people right now that are dealing with Alzheimer's. I want to throw out a little bit of data. In 2022, 6.5 million Americans lived with Alzheimer's. And of course, that's for the age of 65 and older. And that comes from alzheimers.org. And I want, Dr. Scott, you and I to sit back and watch the promotional video that you shared with us that kind of lets our viewers know what your lab is doing, what Santa Clara University is doing. So let's roll that video and we'll listen in.
First-person caregiving simulation. The purpose of this simulation is to give you the opportunity to face the challenges of caring for someone with dementia and learn best practices of person-centered care.
Hi, Kennedy. Hi, Mabel. Hi, Mabel. How's it going? Who are you? Why are you here?
Above all, remember that although people with dementia may forget facts about you or forget who you are altogether, they will never forget how you make them feel. See you again soon for more practice.
Dr. Scott, I will say that promotional video was short, but it actually is the culmination of a lot of work for you and your team. At the very beginning of that video, we saw a person with a headset, a VR headset. So can you tell me a little bit about how this will enable caretakers to actually learn more efficiently?
Mm-hmm. So with the use of VR, the immersion in the headset gives you a sense of presence that is greater than other modalities versus, if you're looking at a screen and watching a video or even a video game where you're making choices. But when you're inside the headset, you are in that first person position going through a simulation of an experience. And that alone increases how fast we learn something and how we see ourselves, like the vision of ourselves doing whatever that thing may be. So that's kind of the learning theory behind doing simulation learning in virtual reality.
Well, and I think one of the things we were just talking about just a few minutes ago was that everyone can think they're going to react in a certain way, but the software in this headset actually allows a person to walk through plan A, plan B, plan C, and that is really a learning tool.
Yeah, and when you're in that experience, we did this with video, so that we had actors making eye contact with the camera. So when the person with dementia is displaying behaviors, they're looking at you and you have to respond to them. You're given choices of what you would choose to do. And the likely consequence of that is then played out. And then you're given another choice. What would you do next? And so you're experiencing what would happen if you made those choices. And creates a safe learning environment where you can do a redo and you can come back to it the next day, so that you internally have that model and practice of how to work through these challenging situations.
I'm kind of old school. When I first heard about what you were doing with your lab and Santa Clara University, I thought of a choose your own adventure. Have you ever read those books where you got to choose which one? And I always went back and wanted to try each one. And so that's a very good, it's a very good memory tool as well. And I like that you mentioned that you had actors portray these roles out, because what this project has done for the university and connecting the lab is that it's brought in a lot of disciplines. Talk about the different disciplines that really participated in this lengthy project.
So when we started with our team of faculty that were interested in this, in dementia care, and that ranged from, bioengineering, psychology, public health, kind of the ones you would expect. And that was, the initial team. I myself am in bioengineering. My background's in neuroscience, and I understand Alzheimer's disease as the disease process and the brain changes more than the behavior, as the psychology faculty do. So it started with that, and then the relevant student groups, in those disciplines during the research phase. And then when we identified this is the solution we're going to build, because there were actually 4 possibilities of what we would build, then it called upon additional talents. So we reached out to communications to find film students. The chair of the theater department is actually a voice coach, and she is the narrator for this prototype. So across the board, we're pulling in the interests and talents of the whole university, regardless of what department we're from, in order to build something that serves the population.
That's amazing. And so when we're talking about building that process and building that project up, we have to, of course, mention the sponsor. Your sponsor has some really lofty goals for this. And that's how the sponsor connected with Santa Clara University. So talk a little bit about that connection.
So Mods Ventures is part of a family foundation, and they sponsor research and innovation for dementia care. And their approach is care before the cure, that we need better quality of care for people living with dementia and their families now. So the partnership with them was to do what we thought Santa Clara could do best, to use technology to better serve caregivers. And we at Santa Clara, we have a strong engineering program. We have a XR studio. We have strong theater and psychology and public health. And so we looked at where those intersections could solve some of the problems. There are so many to solve, but you always have to ask yourself, what can you do to help? And this is where we landed. But the partnership with Mods Ventures is a multi-year partnership where it comes starting from the idea to our prototype, and then figuring out how do we disseminate this, how do we get it out of the lab and into the community.
And you're actually on your second phase as well.
Yes, we've completed the first prototype. We've done the user testing. We're in the process of actually testing those assumptions that people learn better in VR. We're running that study now with 3 partner sites, and designing our next training module, so that this actually becomes a library of VR modules that people can use to prepare themselves for the caregiving job.
It's pretty amazing. And how long are we talking of a process from inception to the point that we saw that promotional video where you could actually say, I can put this into the hands of a dementia caretaker and they can start learning?
From idea to functional prototype was 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so 6 months to get to that point, and as we said, we're going through that testing and validation phase right now, and figuring out the dissemination and commercialization. But to achieve that, we haven't worked alone. Even not everything happened within the university. universities honestly don't move that fast.
Well,
So,
that's right. But you partnered
mhm.
up with Creator Up, and Creator Up is doing some pretty amazing things, and you were able to really use them to create, to make this project come to fruition to the point where you are now as well.
Yes, Creator Up is a film production studio really specializing in XR and 360 video. They do 360 video really, really well, and they've done many projects that are training and educational. So they understood what we needed from this type of filming, and so they've been great partners in getting this done from the technical side and also simply the film production side. We had to find a location, we had to find actors. This was all done in partnership with them, and they also took on one of our film student and treated her like an intern. So she learned directly from them how to do this type of filming, and now she's preparing the videos on her own. So
She's found a new endeavor all through this project. And I have to ask you, what was the most amazing part for you as a neuroscientist, to see all of these students, all of these different disciplines? What was the most, what was the impact that it left on you?
and what I was pleasantly surprised by, when we started this project, was the number of people in the community that really cared and wanted to do something, but didn't have the connection together to do it. There wasn't a hub to bring them together. When we did our initial need survey, like we sent out a survey to our community to ask them what they would need and how they use technology. That was kind of phase one. And of the 80 something participants, 2/3 or so were our faculty and staff. And so knowing that when they go home, they're in that caregiving role, they're taking care of their spouse, their mother or father, and really understanding how broad of an impact it is, and the yearning for building solutions and improving the quality of life for people living with dementia and their caregivers who are
It
giving
touches so many people.
Mhm.
Touches so many people. You don't realize it, but you have someone, my husband's mother, and
Mhm.
start going through all of the people
Mhm.
that and that's why this story reaches so many people.
And on the student side, they're not, most of them aren't yet at a caregiving role, but we've had lots of enthusiasm, lots of students approaching us wanting to work on this project. So, this upcoming generation, they care a lot about how they can contribute to the challenges of older age. It's on their consciousness for sure.
And I spoke to a student who told me she never really thought about delving into this type of healthcare and connecting her and that generation, or as she told me, that generation's problems. And she
Mhm.
said, what I realized, it's something that I will deal with in my lifetime. If I'm not touched by it, I will, eventually get to an age where I would want someone to reach out to me and to be able to help me in the most, humane and caring way. And this technology is doing just that.
We
It's
hope
so,
so.
it's so amazing.
Mhm.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dr. Scott, for taking the time out on this Friday to join us. Thank you for
Thank you
coming
so
on.
much. Right.
I appreciate it. Well, everyone else, you might be asking, what's up for Gatherverse News next? Well, Monday, of course. And I have to ask you, have you seen the movie Top Gun? Because our very own Priya David Clemens will be meeting a real life maverick. His name is Gary Jam Moore, and he's an Air Force Innovation Chief training fighter pilots using artificial intelligence and VR. And you can join us on Monday for that conversation. You won't want to miss it. Now, if you're interested in sponsorship, well, I want you to check out that screen right there. It's gatherversenews.org. And of course, now that I've talked about sponsoring, I'd like to thank our sponsor today. Thank you so much to Gifts for Good, Gifts for Good is right there, gifting platform. This platform empowers employees and its clients and supports the work of over 70 nonprofits. And a special shout out to the Chief Impact Officer, that's her right there, Janice Steverdeen, for support. Janice, thank you so much for sponsoring us today. And thank you all for joining us today for Gatherverse News Unscripted. I'm Jade Hernandez, and I hope you join us next week at noon. And until then, be safe and have a great weekend. See y'all.